as we said before, women are actually 9 times more likely to have SLE. This is because women have 2 X chromosomes while men only have 1. And having the extra X chromosome means there are actually more immunological genes on the chromosome, and there's more protein because the X chromosome is so much bigger than the Y chromosome. And there's actually a lot of genes on the X chromosome. Like the Y chromosome is like a little thing that just tells the body to be a boy, while the X chromosome actually has a lot of stuff on it. And on the X chromosome, there's actually a gene called CD40, and this has been known to contribute to the pathogenesis of SLE, which is also why women are more genetically predisposed to have SLE than men are. We want to make it clear that the sex hormone doesn't cause SLE, so it's not estrogen and testosterone that cause the SLE, but it's actually the fact that there is just more protein in women than there are in men. As you can see from this diagram, the X chromosome is a lot bigger, and there are these genes on the X chromosome that have been associated with SLE. And you can see on the Y chromosome, there's actually none, and it's very small compared to the X chromosome. This diagram shows the cycle of lupus, and it starts with probably a genetic predisposition, which we talked about earlier, which is that women have 9 times more chance of getting lupus than men do. And these can be triggered by the environment, which we also talked about before, and it triggers the innate immune response, which then triggers the adaptive immune response. And if this doesn't make sense, we're going to draw it out later, so be patient. This causes like the disease because this cycle keeps repeating and repeating and repeating, which means there's like a lot of adaptive immune system going on, which is the T and B cells. As you can see, this causes a positive feedback loop of apoptosis, which is triggered by the environment, and the innate immune response, and this causes even more response, which causes more apoptosis, which causes more response, and you get the picture. So usually, lupus is started with a trigger, which triggers an immune overreaction. And this immune overactivation is initially an innate response, which means it has macrophages and usually causes inflammation because the body believes that it's fighting off a disease. Now, this immune overactivation causes a lot of apoptosis, which happens in cells, and usually apoptosis happens in cells that are old or are like dying. But this immune overactivation causes apoptosis in healthy cells, which is a problem. And usually the body has no problem of clearing out these dead cells because it's what the body does. However, because there are so many extra cells going through apoptosis, it needs more cell clearance. And it doesn't have enough cell clearance because there just aren't enough cells to take up these dead particles, so there's not enough. This causes the body to be overloaded because there are so many extra proteins in the blood going around, and this actually causes more immune overactivation, and this causes the adaptive immune system to be triggered. And the adaptive immune system has T and B cells, and this is a problem because when there's not enough clearance, there's actually DNA and phospholipids and nuclear antigens. And these T and B cells will attack these antigens, which is basically an autoimmune because the body is attacking itself. And these antigens are actually present because there's not enough clearance. These antigens are actually visible to these T and B cells because usually all of this is inside a cell, but since it went through apoptosis, it's actually visible and in the bloodstream. there are blood tests that can help diagnose lupus. And one test that some doctors use are the anti-nuclear antibody test, which is also known as ANA. And these tests look at the blood of the patient, and they look for these anti-nuclear antibodies, which are antibodies directed against the cell's nucleus. And like I've said before, this means the cell's nuclear antigens are visible to the B and T cells, so which create the antibodies. So if there are these antibodies, that means the cell's nuclear antigens are present, which could be a sign of an autoimmune disease, not necessarily lupus. It could be any autoimmune. Another few tests which have like similar results are anti-phospholipid antibodies and anti-double-stranded DNA, which use the same concepts because these antigens aren't usually present in the blood and aren't usually shown. As we know, DNA actually has like 3 layers between the DNA and the outside environment. So if the DNA antigens are shown, that means the antibodies are present, and that means there are too many apoptic cells. Other tests that could be used to diagnose lupus or help diagnose lupus are urinalysis tests, which check for proteins and cells in the urine, and this is to see if the kidneys are working properly. This works to help diagnose lupus because of so many apoptic cells. There are actually proteins floating around in the blood, and the body can't process it, which means the kidneys are left with the work. And if the kidneys can't process it, then proteins will be expelled in the urine. Also, a kidney biopsy can be used to check for inflammation of the kidneys, and the kidneys will be inflamed if they are overused, which means there are too many proteins and cells passing through the blood. This is a picture of kidneys that have too many proteins inside of them. As you can see from these dark spots, these are all protein deposits, which means there are way too many cells dying, and the body can't keep up, and neither can the kidneys.
Treatments. Now, since lupus isn't actually curable, there can only be treatments to help alleviate the pain, and this is through suppression of some of the symptoms that you get. On top of getting treatments, what you can personally do to improve your quality of life once you're diagnosed with lupus is to just maintain a healthy lifestyle, make sure you have a healthy body weight, and just make sure you're in general good health otherwise. And some medications that are used, aspirin actually is used since it's an anti-inflammatory, as well as other immunosuppressive agents such as like cyclophosphamide and methotrexate. And what they do is they basically modify the B cell function, as well as T cell and B cell interactions. And also, some other medication is used as hormone manipulators, such as this right here. I'm not even going to try to pronounce that because I'll probably fail. So yeah.